What's up YouTube? My name is Andrea René and welcome to my channel Andrea René Abroad, where I talk about Peace Corps, travel, and working abroad. I'm a returned Peace Corps volunteer who served in Nicaragua from August of 2016 to April of 2018. I'm now living and working in Melbourne, Australia for a family with 3 young children. For those of you who are here every single week, you've probably already noticed that I have a different background behind me. That is because I am currently in the surf town of Jan Juc in the state of Victoria, just a few hours outside of Melbourne, where my host family has a beach home. I've been relaxing all weekend, which has been really great. Be sure to follow me on Instagram if you're curious to find out more. Now, one of my most popular uploads on YouTube was the video, How Much Money Do Peace Corps Volunteers Make? So now that I have been here in Australia working as an au pair for almost 3 months, I thought I would make a similar video, but instead it is about how much money do au pairs make. In this video, I'll be covering how much money you need to have up front to become an au pair, the benefits, your personal expenses, and also some recommendations and tips for how to manage your money here while you are an au pair. Now, I am an au pair here in Australia, so all of my tips and recommendations will be specific to Australia, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they won't be applicable to whichever country you are planning to au pair in. If you are currently a high school student and are wanting to convince your parents to allow you to go on a gap year prior to going to college, I highly recommend showing them this video as it breaks down all of the financials that your parents would probably be curious about. That being said, let's go ahead and get started. Let's first talk about the upfront costs of being an au pair. How much money do you need to be able to put down before you even depart from the United States? The first thing that you need to know is an airline ticket to Australia is definitely on the expensive side. It can range anywhere from $900 to $1,500, and even more money if you are not organized about when you buy your ticket. Obviously, some of you will be flying from the West Coast, as I did, and others of you will be flying from the East Coast, which is even farther away from Australia. So this will definitely vary the cost of your plane ticket, but I would say in general, you should be able to find a ticket for $900 if you're from the West Coast, and definitely $1,300 if you're from the East Coast. My recommendation is to get on the website Kiwi. I've had the most success on this website for purchasing my tickets for going abroad. They are generally the cheapest tickets that I am able to find on the internet. The next thing that you'll need to be able to pay for is your Australian work holiday visa. Americans are only allowed to be in Australia without a visa for a maximum of 90 days. Generally, au pair assignments are at least 6 months, at the minimum 3 months. So you definitely want to make sure that you have your Australian work holiday visa so you are able to work as an au pair in Australia for a lengthy amount of time and make your gap year or travels worth your while. Now, I've already made a full video on YouTube on the Australian work holiday visa, which I will link above, but depending on the exchange rate, you can expect your Australian work holiday visa to be between $350 and $400 USD. When you are filling out your application for the Australian work holiday visa, the Australian government automated system will decide whether or not you need to have a visa medical. In my case, I spent the last 2 years in Nicaragua, and so my application was flagged as needing a visa medical, which was a little bit difficult, as I explained in the video, again, that I already made on the Australian work holiday visa application. In order to get your visa medical clearance, you need to visit a physician that is approved by the Australian panel of physicians, which means you can't just go to your regular doctor's office unless magically your doctor's office happens to be one that is approved by the Australian panel of physicians. In my case, I'm from Portland, Oregon, and the only physician that was approved in the Pacific Northwest was in Seattle, so I had to take a day trip up there. My visa medical ended up costing around $300, but I'm sure the prices will vary slightly depending on where you go and what you are required to do. It is likely that your visa medical will not be covered by your health insurance. Mine was not, and so you will need to be able to pay for your visa medical in full. So let's go ahead and add up the total of all of the things that you need to pay for upfront if you are planning to become an au pair in Australia. Let's say you are unorganized and you wait forever to buy your plane ticket to Australia and it ends up being $1,500. You apply for your medical visa and the exchange rate is not so great, so you end up paying $400 for that. And then let's say you end up having to get your visa medical clearance and your health insurance does not cover it, and that also ends up being $400. That comes out to $2,300 total for your upfront expenses. I will say that the au pair that I replaced, who also happens to be American, did not have to do the visa medical portion of the application. And that is, I'm guessing, just because she had never really been out of the United States for a significant amount of time in the past 5 years, whereas I had. So I had to be able to dish out that additional money. If you're in the process of deciding whether or not to become an au pair, if you haven't been out of the United States for a long time, for a long period of time, then I would not worry about it. You likely will just get your visa application approved immediately and you won't have to do the medical clearance at all. So I would say your upfront costs can definitely be much lower than $2,300 if you plan ahead with getting your airline ticket, and then also if you happen to never have left the United States or you've only gone on short trips outside of the United States, you likely won't have to do the medical clearance. Now that we've talked about the cost of becoming an au pair upfront, let's talk about the benefits, the monetary benefits of being an au pair. Here in Australia, it's pretty standard for the family you are au pairing for to provide you with room and board. You can expect to have your own bedroom and maybe even your own bathroom if you're lucky. Your host family will also provide you with access to their laundry units. You will have access to their Wi-Fi. Your family will provide you with food. So as I said before, room and board will be covered by your host family. In addition to room and board being provided, it's pretty standard here in Australia for au pairs who work 30 hours a week to be paid 200 Aussie dollars a week, which I'll convert to USD for you all here. And for au pairs who work 40 hours a week, they generally will be paid 250 Aussie dollars. Most host families will provide you with additional benefits. So in my case, my host family provided me with a SIM card and work phone. My personal iPhone was not unlocked, but luckily they had another iPhone lying around, so they ended up giving me that phone, which has an Australian phone number, so that if my host family needs to call me, then they can just call me on that. On that note, I would definitely say if your host family wants to be able to call you, and that is something that is important to them, then they need to provide that for you, as that is part of the expectations of your job. Another benefit that I have, obviously as I am here in the beach town of Janjuk, is that I'm able to go on vacations with them. So my host family is super open and they have space in their car to take me, so I am always invited to go on any weekend excursion that they happen to be going on, and I would say that is pretty regular for most au pairs. Now, as you are applying to become an au pair, you will notice that different families will be offering different things during the application process. So I would say in general, families who do not live in popular city centers like Melbourne and Sydney will be offering more in their package to entice you to come to their city and au pair for them. For example, while I was applying to become an au pair, I had a family from Perth reach out to me, and in their package deal, they were offering a gym membership in addition to the room and board, the weekly allowance, the phone. And I think the reason why they were offering that is because Perth is so isolated from the rest of Australia. It is pretty much the only large metropolis on the western seaboard of Australia, so it's a lot harder for them to get au pairs. So if you're planning to go to a more isolated area, then you can probably expect to get more benefits than those who are going to Sydney or Melbourne. Speaking of a gym membership, let's go ahead and move on to expenses. What things do I have to pay for while I am an au pair? So my host family does not provide me with a gym membership, which is actually quite standard. I would say I don't know any au pairs here in Melbourne who are provided with a gym membership. So from my weekly allowance of 200 Aussie dollars, I always use $31 of those to pay for my gym membership, which is really close to my house. I've actually already made a video about how to stay fit and healthy as an au pair where I talk about my gym membership and my exercise routine. So if that's interesting to you, go ahead and click the card up above. Aside from my gym membership, the rest of my weekly income is just to spend how I please or save how I please. There is really nothing else that I need to pay for. So if you are in high school and trying to convince your parents to let you go and be an au pair and take a gap year, maybe you can convince them that they would pay for the plane ticket up front and your Australian work holiday visa, but that you will pay them back with the money that you earn as an au pair. I would say this is more than doable, especially if you're planning to be in Australia for a long period of time. If you just save even just half of your earnings every single week, you will more than be able to pay back your parents if that's the kind of negotiation or deal that you want to make with them. Now that I've covered expenses, which as I said, really weren't that many, you really don't have to pay for anything while you're an au pair, let's talk about some recommendations and tips that I have for you all monetary wise as you're thinking about becoming an au pair. So my recommendation would be to put aside 25 to 50% of your weekly earnings so that you have enough saved up for bigger ticket items such as going to a concert or going on a tour, so that you don't have to use your money from back home in the US. You can just pay with the cash up front. I would definitely say don't blow your 200 Aussie dollars every single week. Be putting some of that money aside so that you can afford to go to that concert that is in Melbourne or go on a trip to Sydney while you're here. Whatever it is that you want to spend your money on while you're here in Australia, use your au pair earnings. Don't use your money from back home. Because we do live in the 21st century, I would also recommend to those of you who are planning to stay here more than 6 months to open up an Australian bank account so that you can have a debit card so that you can purchase things online and other things that need to be purchased with a debit card. I myself never opened up a bank account just because I'm only here a little under 5 months. It just didn't make sense for me to do it with the amount of time that I'm here. But I've pretty much been able to pay for everything in cash, which has been really nice. Even my gym membership, I was able to negotiate paying that in cash as well. So if you want, you can go the whole time just paying everything in cash with the money that you're earning. But if you're gonna be here a long time, I do recommend opening up an Australian bank account. I think that pretty much covers everything having to do with money and being an au pair. But if you have any more questions for me, go ahead and leave me a comment below and I will definitely get back to you. Overall, I would say that I definitely feel like I make enough money as an au pair. I would not be able to live in Melbourne, Australia for as long as I have if I did not have room and board provided for. So if you are trying to think of an affordable way to do a gap year or just take an extended vacation, I would definitely consider being an au pair. Like I said, I barely had to use any of my money back in the United States. It was mostly just the upfront costs, which if you would like, you can definitely pay yourself back or pay your parents back in the time that you are here if you're putting aside some of your earnings. That pretty much covers it all. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram, check out my Facebook and blog. I would love to see you all over there as well. All right, folks, I'll see you next week.